Now, a couple of months ago, I was invited along with Mark Abramowitz to come out to Honda because they were going to have a special meeting. And at that special meeting, they were going to have someone take a Honda fuel cell vehicle and drive it for a few months. And that person is our next speaker, Terry Tamminen, who's going to tell us about his experiences driving it. Terry, you're on.
Thanks, Hank, very much, and thanks to all of you for giving me a few minutes this morning. I actually want to talk about three things. First of all, my experience on the hydrogen highway, and then secondly, some astonishing developments in the last 12 months that many of you may know parts of, but I doubt any of you know all of, but which taken collectively mean that you are on the cutting edge of something that I think will exponentially increase your business interests, your research interests, and the other work that you're doing around hydrogen over the next 12 to 36 months. And then the third thing, I want to thank you for your patriotism, and I'll explain that in a moment. First of all, I want to thank Hank for inviting me and for being just such a great leader of the council and the hydrogen movement in California for so long. You know, many of you don't know that 30, 40 years ago when he was starting out, he and Arnold used to work out together. Did you know that? And yeah, no, it's true. I know he doesn't like to talk about that, but they were down in Venice at Gold's Gym. It's true, and they were pumping away one day, just each trying to outdo the other. And Hank put down his 400-pound barbell, and he said, Arnold, I'm thinking of a career path here at this point, and I'm either thinking of kind of going into clean technology and hydrogen in particular, or I'm thinking about doing what you've done, really work on my body, my muscles, and become Mr. Universe. What do you think? And Arnold kind of looked at his pecs and his abs and his glutes, especially his glutes, and he said, Hank, I think you ought to do that hydrogen thing. So they went back to pumping, and, Arnold got to thinking about this, and he thought, I'm kind of at a career juncture myself. I should ask Hank for some advice. So Arnold puts down his 1,000-pound barbell, and he says, Hank, I've been Mr. Universe 7 times. And then I've made a movie that I think you've seen, Pumping Iron, and then another one, Conan the Barbarian. Now, based on that, do you think that I have a chance of being a great action movie hero in Hollywood? Well, all of you know that Hank, he's painfully honest, if anything. And so he just turned to Arnold and he said, Arnold, I have seen those movies, and you have about as much chance of being a big Hollywood action movie star as you do of being governor of California. And the rest, as they say, for both of them is history. Actually, I did talk to Arnold yesterday and told him I was going to be here today, and he sends his regards. There was a slim chance we might get him to drop by, but unfortunately demands of budgets and all kinds of other things precluded that. But he actually, I don't want to steal his thunder, he will be talking a lot about hydrogen in the next couple months. He's doing a lot of work behind the scenes to try to encourage, shall we say, many of our friends to meet the commitments and the pledges that they've made over the last couple of years on fueling, and to see what else we can do, even in tough budget times, for the state to get back into its leadership role. So believe me, when he first launched the Hydrogen Highway, and he said, I'll be back, well, he means it. So he's still very much in your corner, and thanks you very much for what you're doing. As I said, there's 3 things I really want to chat about in the time that's the 3 hours that they've allotted me today, which is, first of all, my experience of driving on the Hydrogen Highway. I've test-driven all the different manufacturers' cars and vehicles, even a bus down in Chico, or in Chino, I guess it was, some time ago, and it's amazing the advancements that have been made in the technology, not just in fuel cells and in delivering the fuel and in all of the technology, but in turning them from obviously kind of demonstration vehicles and test beds, laboratories on wheels, into really just seamless, wonderful cars. And the clarity, I think, is probably, I'm not trying to just hear pimp for Honda at all, but I got to say the clarity to me really now is the leader of the pack. And if you haven't had a chance to drive it, By the way, Steve forgot to mention the best part of all today. Thanks to Steve and the whole crew, Tim, everyone, for what they've done here and for hosting us today. But he forgot to mention the most important thing. Each of you on your way out, they're lining them up now, will get the keys to your new Clarity, and they're all going to be parked outside here, so you'll get a chance to drive them. But I have to say, it was about, Steve, when was it? Like maybe last summer, I had to go up to an event in Santa Barbara, and I hadn't leased the new FCX yet. I just started leasing it in September. But they lent one to me, and I said, can I get up to Santa Barbara and back, because there's not a station up there yet. And he kind of did some calculations, and he said, well, if you kind of baby it, even though it's a mile or two longer, take the coast route. That way you won't have to go up over Sepulveda Pass, over the mountains and all that kind of stuff, so you'll get better fuel economy. Baby it. Don't use the air conditioner. And, you'll probably get your round trip, even out of the limited capacity range of the earlier FCX model. And it ended up being a brutally hot day, and my wife wasn't feeling well. She was recovering from knee surgery, and I just didn't have the time to deal with the coast. So to be honest, I figured, what, if I run out of fuel, I run out of fuel. We'll stop at a motel, and I'll call, and we'll get a tow truck. So air conditioner blazing, going up Sepulveda Pass at 70, frankly, 80 miles an hour. Heading out the 101 all the way out to Santa Barbara, and I arrived at the event, and the gauge was dead on half. So I thought, well, all right, if half got me here, half can get me back, and on the way back I can try to baby it a little bit more. So we do the event, turn around, come back, and it was still very warm, so I had the air conditioner on, and my wife had her leg propped up in the front and the whole thing, and came back on the freeway. Again, I figured, well, I'm better off on the freeway than on PCH. If I do run out of fuel, I can always pull over somewhere, call a tow truck. Long story short, it ended up being 189 miles round trip. I got back to Santa Monica with 3 bars left on the fuel gauge, which my calculations showed was 18 miles left of range. So I never hesitated, and it's a small car. You can fit it on a flatbed. But it just performed fabulously, and so I don't know if it's that same generation that I'm now leasing, but I've had the same kind of reaction. I'll tell you the only downside of driving a fuel cell car, which you wouldn't have with the Clarity, because most people wouldn't know that that's what it is, but the FCX, which is emblazoned, and by the way, I've taken the liberty of slapping hydrogen highway stickers on the side of it so people understand that exists, and a lot of people don't know what a fuel cell is. They think it's a hybrid of some kind, so hydrogen highway makes it clear, what the fuel is. But the only downside, and I'm not kidding about this, is it takes longer to get anywhere you're going, because when you pull into a public parking lot, you cannot get out of the car without somebody coming up and starting to quiz you about it. And it's usually 2 or 3. And you don't want to be rude, and so I end up giving out brochures and explaining it and answering the same questions over and over again. But that's great. I mean, it ends up taking you longer every single time you're parking the car, unless it's in your own garage. And even then, your neighbors are always coming over wanting to drive it and ask about it. It's amazing. And again, the other thing, which again will not be a surprise to any of you, is how many people are saying, where do I get one? I don't care about the limited range or limited fueling infrastructure. If you can do it, I can do it. And when you think about it, I mean, how many of you, unless you're a traveling salesman, how many of you drive more than 20 miles a day, even 40 miles a day, round trip commuting or whatever? So, like in my case, this idea that there's only 4 fueling stations, I've probably used all of them at one point, just because I've actually gone out of my way to try to use them. But the reality is 90% of my fueling is done at the Santa Monica station, and I would imagine if you drive gasoline cars, there's probably some favored station that you use on your way to work or near your home or near your business that you end up using 90% of the time anyway. So what's the difference? There's 10,000 retail gasoline outlets in the state of California, but you don't use 9,999 of them most of the time. So again, that map is really deceptive when people go, oh my God, there's only 4 stations, 5 stations, 8 stations, 10 stations, whatever it is. It's almost irrelevant because of the way that most of us actually use and fuel our vehicles.